In medieval Europe, a basic government and society was founded, known as the feudal system. This involved finding a powerful lord who would offer protection in return for services. Feudalism strongly enforced vassalage, which was where a person has an obligation to a lord who would keep them safe and grant them land in return for services. The land granted to vassals was called a fief, and during the 9th century was one of the most valuable things a lord could grant due to the society's lack of money.
Manors were districts over which a lord had domain and could exercise certain rights and privileges in medieval England. Typically, a medieval manor included a manor house built apart from villages where peasants and other workers lived. A manor was usually comprised of tracts of agricultural land, a village whose inhabitants worked that land, and a manor house where the lord who owned or controlled the estate lived. Manors might also have had woods, orchards, gardens, and lakes or ponds where fish could be found. The size of the manor depended on how rich the owners were. On the manor lands, usually near the village, one could often find a mill, bakery, and blacksmith. Manors were largely self-sufficient.
The European society was composed of the king, who was a top leader in the land. Since the king could not control all of the land by himself, he divided it up among the barons. In return, the barons pledged their loyalty and soldiers to the king. When a king died, his firstborn son would inherit the throne, and when one family stayed in power for a long time, it was known as a dynasty. The barons and nobles were high-ranked individuals who ruled large areas of land called fiefs, given to them by the king. The land was divided up among lords who ran individual manors. The barons were in charge of maintaining an army that was at the king's service and would have to pay a tax called shield money if they did not have one. The lords ran local manors and were the king's knights who could be called into battle by their barons. The lords owned everything on their land, including the peasants, crops, and the villages. The bishop was the top church leader in the kingdom and managed an area called a diocese. The Catholic Church was very powerful in most parts of medieval Europe, and this made the bishop powerful as well. Not only that, but the church received a tenth of the 10% from all the people. This made the bishops very rich. Most of the people living in the Middle Ages were peasants who had a rough life. Some peasants were considered free and could own their own businesses like carpenters, bankers, and blacksmiths. Others were more like slaves who owned nothing and were pledged to their local lord. They worked long days, 6 days a week, and barely had enough food to survive.
Here are some fun facts. About 90% of the people worked the land as peasants. Peasants worked hard and died young. Most were dead before they reached 30 years old. The kings believed they were given the right to rule by God. This was called the divine right. Lords and barons swore oaths of homage and fealty to their kings. The lord held absolute power over the fief or manor, including holding court or deciding punishments for crimes.